Something unexpected happened at one of America's biggest coin shows. Dealers walked in prepared for the worst, prepared for panic sellers, prepared for empty tables, prepared for a market in retreat. But what they found stopped them cold. Buyers, not sellers, were flooding the floor. Silver was moving faster than anyone anticipated, and the dealers who came ready to buy left stunned that they were selling instead. So the question every serious investor needs to ask right now is, why is demand surging at the exact moment most people think the market is falling apart? What do these dealers know that the mainstream financial world is not telling you? The answer may completely change how you think about your money. If you've been with us for a while, you already know we don't do hype here. We do analysis. Now, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Think of it like clipping a coupon you'll actually use. Don't let it just sit there. And before we dive in, drop a comment and tell us, where in the world are you watching from today? We read every single one. Now, let's get into it. The doors opened early that morning in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Dealers had driven hours to get there. Some had flown in from states far away. They had packed their inventory, loaded their cases, and made the long journey to one of America's regional coin shows, a place where silver and gold change hands, where collectors meet traders, and where the real pulse of the precious metals market is felt long before it shows up in any financial report. But something was different this time. Something that nobody, not even the most experienced dealers in the room, had seen coming. Before the show even began, the mood among the dealers was cautious, careful, even a little dark. The past several months had not been easy for the silver market. Spot prices had moved in unpredictable directions. Premiums, the extra cost a buyer pays above the raw metal price, had been falling steadily. And the general feeling among many in the precious metals community was that retail buyers had gone quiet. People were watching, waiting, holding back. At least, that is what everyone assumed. One content creator and silver market observer had made the journey to Tulsa specifically to document what he expected would be a difficult show. He had built a following by tracking the real-world behavior of silver buyers and sellers, not the numbers on a trading screen, but the actual human decisions happening on the ground, at tables, in conversations, face-to-face. He expected to walk into that show and see exactly what the broader market sentiment was suggesting. He expected sellers. He expected people walking in with bags of silver, ready to offload their holdings at whatever price they could get. He expected dealers sitting behind quiet tables, waiting for customers who never came. He expected the kind of atmosphere that forms when a market loses confidence, slow, uncertain, and a little bit defeated. That is not what he found. What he found was something that made him stop and reconsider everything he thought he knew about where silver demand stood at that moment. The floor was active. People were moving through the aisles with purpose. Dealers were engaged in real conversations, not the polite, empty kind that happens when nothing is selling, but the focused, fast-moving kind that happens when product is actually moving. Buyers were there, real buyers, people who had come with intention and with money, and they were not selling, they were buying. This was not what the headlines had suggested. This was not what the broader financial conversation had implied. Everything in the mainstream narrative around precious metals at that time pointed toward hesitation, toward a market where ordinary people were stepping back, not stepping forward. But here, on the floor of the Tulsa Coin Show, something else entirely was happening. He made his way through the room and began speaking with dealers. Not just one or two, many. He asked direct questions and listened carefully to the answers. And the story that emerged from those conversations was consistent, clear, and striking. Sales were strong. Not just acceptable, not just decent for a slow period, strong. Dealers who had prepared for quiet days were reporting movement they had not anticipated. Product that sat at other shows was finding buyers here, and the type of buyer showing up was not the panic-driven, emotionally reactive kind. These were deliberate people, people who had been watching the market, waiting for the right moment, and had decided that moment had arrived. One dealer in particular stood out in these conversations. His name was Josh, representing Minot Coin and Bullion out of North Dakota. He had partnered at the show with another well-known dealer named Dave from Coin Huskers, based in Omaha, Nebraska. Between the two of them, they had decades of experience reading markets, buying inventory, and understanding what real demand looks like versus what manufactured excitement looks like. And even they were surprised. Josh would later describe the situation in simple, honest terms. The foot traffic, he acknowledged, felt slightly lighter than in years past. The U.S. Mint had pulled out of the show at the last minute. NGC, one of the most respected grading companies in the hobby, had also backed out unexpectedly. Some dealers, discouraged by those withdrawals, had chosen not to attend. By every surface measurement, the show should have been underwhelming. But surface measurements, as any serious businessman knows, rarely tell the full story. What was happening beneath the surface at the Tulsa Coin Show was something far more significant, a signal that the precious metals market was sending quietly, clearly, and with remarkable consistency. And the dealers in that room were only beginning to understand what it meant. There is a particular kind of surprise that only experienced businessmen understand. It is not the surprise of something going wrong. Anyone can prepare for that. It is not the surprise of a missed opportunity or a calculation that did not land the way it should have. Those happen regularly in business, and seasoned professionals absorb them without much reaction. The surprise that stops a veteran in his tracks is a completely different animal. It is the surprise of being right about the market and wrong about the moment. Dave from Coinhuskers knew silver. He had spent years in the business, buying and selling precious metals across the Midwest, building a reputation as one of the most reliable and fair dealers in his region. Dealers did not just respect Dave. They drove hours to reach him. Some came from states away, loaded with product, because they knew Dave paid better than anyone else nearby. That reputation was not built on luck. It was built on discipline, consistency, and a deep understanding of how precious metals markets actually move in the real world. Not on paper, but in people's hands. So when Dave arrived at the Tulsa Coin Show, he arrived with a plan. And that plan made complete sense. Just weeks earlier, Dave had worked the Kansas City show. What he witnessed there was textbook behavior for a market under pressure. The public was offloading silver. Sellers were coming in steadily, bringing their holdings to the table, accepting prices that reflected the current spot environment, and walking away with cash. It was the kind of show where a strong buyer thrives, where patience and capital combine to create real advantage. Dave had cleaned up in Kansas City, not because he was aggressive or opportunistic in a predatory sense, but because he was prepared when others were not. He had the cash, the knowledge, and the willingness to move when the moment called for it. So naturally, he expected Tulsa to follow the same pattern. He packed his inventory carefully, bringing a variety of product, yes, but structuring his setup primarily around purchasing. He brought the tools for authentication. He brought capital. He brought the mindset of a buyer walking into a seller's market. He was ready to accumulate. What happened instead would become one of the most telling data points of the entire show. From the first hours of trading, something felt off from his expectations, that is. The sellers did not come, not in the numbers he anticipated, not with the urgency he had seen in Kansas City. The public, which he had fully expected to arrive at his table looking to convert silver into cash, largely did not show up in that capacity. Instead, the people who approached his table were doing the opposite. They were looking at what he had. They were asking prices. They were reaching into their pockets. They were buying Dave's inventory, the product he had brought almost as a secondary consideration, something to display while he focused on purchasing, began moving faster than he had planned for. Items that dealers sometimes struggle to shift in uncertain markets were being picked up with confidence. People were not browsing casually. They were deciding quickly, transacting cleanly, and moving on to the next table to find more. By the end of the first full day, Dave was not thinking about the silver he had accumulated. He was thinking about the silver he had sold. This distinction matters enormously for anyone trying to read the real condition of a market. In financial analysis, there is a concept that separates surface data from behavioral data. Surface data tells you what the numbers look like: spot price, premium levels, inventory figures. Behavioral data tells you what people are actually doing with their money when they believe no one important is watching. Coin shows are one of the few remaining environments where behavioral data is completely unfiltered. There are no algorithms, no institutional players managing optics, no coordinated messaging about what the market is supposed to be doing. There are only individual people standing at tables, making real decisions with real money in real time. And at Tulsa, those real decisions were pointing in one direction with remarkable consistency. Demand was not retreating. It was not hesitating. It was not waiting for better conditions or more favorable headlines before it showed up. It was simply there, quiet, steady, and surprisingly strong. Josh, watching all of this unfold from his own table beside Dave, described the atmosphere with the measured tone of someone who had seen enough markets to know when something genuine was happening versus when something was being performed for an audience. This, he said, felt genuine, not a spike, not a panic buy, not the irrational enthusiasm that sometimes briefly inflates demand before collapsing just as quickly. This felt like conviction, and conviction in any market is the most important signal of all, because it does not arrive loudly. It arrives exactly like this, quietly, consistently, at a coin show in Tulsa, Oklahoma on an ordinary Thursday morning, while the rest of the financial world was looking somewhere else entirely. There is a moment in every market cycle that most people miss, not because it is hidden, not because it requires special access or insider knowledge or a seat at a table where powerful decisions are made. Most people miss it for a much simpler reason. They are not paying attention to the right things. They are watching the headlines. They are tracking the spot price on their phones. They are waiting for some official signal, some announcement from a bank, a government report, a financial commentator on television, to tell them that the moment has arrived. And while they are waiting for that signal, the moment passes. At the Tulsa Coin Show, the moment was not hiding. It was sitting openly on dealer tables, priced and tagged, available to anyone who walked through the door with clear eyes and a willingness to act on what they saw rather than what they had been told to expect. The premiums were the story. For anyone unfamiliar with how precious metals pricing actually works, a brief explanation is necessary here, because this detail is not minor. It is, in fact, the entire point. When someone buys silver, they do not simply pay the spot price, the raw market price of the metal itself. They pay a premium on top of that price. That premium covers the cost of minting, distribution, dealer margin, and market demand. In periods of high enthusiasm, premiums rise significantly. During the peak years of silver buying, it was not unusual for buyers to pay $10, $15, even $20 per ounce above spot price just to acquire standard silver rounds or coins. That reality kept many serious, disciplined buyers on the sidelines. They understood the metal's long-term value. They believed in its role as a store of wealth. But they were not willing to pay inflated entry prices that immediately put them at a disadvantage the moment they made a purchase. Those buyers had been waiting. At Tulsa, their patience was being rewarded in ways that genuinely surprised even the dealers offering the prices. Josh from Minot Coin and Bullion had brought hand-poured silver pieces to the show, a category of silver that carries a certain appeal among collectors and stackers who value craftsmanship alongside metal content. He had priced them at the beginning of the show, on Thursday, when silver spot was trading at a particular level. By Saturday, spot had moved. Silver was now trading at $68 an ounce. Josh's hand-poured pieces were still sitting at their original price, $63 an ounce. He was selling silver at $5 below the current spot price, and they were still sitting on the table. This single data point reveals something profound about market psychology that no financial report will ever capture cleanly. Hand-poured silver occupies a specific niche. It is not for everyone. Some buyers want standard government-issued coins, the recognizability, the guaranteed weight, the ease of resale. Hand-poured pieces require a slightly different buyer, someone who appreciates the form as much as the function. But the broader principle that Josh's table illustrated was unmistakable. Deals of genuine, measurable quality were available on that floor. Not deals manufactured through clever marketing or artificial scarcity. Real deals, priced below metal value, sitting in plain sight. Dave from Coin Huskers had brought 1-gram gold bars to the show, priced at $10 below current melt value, 50 of them. By the final day, they were gone. Silver Eagles were moving at $1.35 over spot, a premium so compressed compared to recent years that veteran buyers recognized immediately what they were looking at. The content creator documenting the show did not just observe these prices from a distance. He bought, not out of impulse, not out of excitement about being at a show and feeling the energy of the room. He bought because the numbers made sense, because the rational, analytical part of his mind that had spent years studying this market recognized a genuine value proposition when it was standing directly in front of him. That recognition is precisely what separates disciplined market participants from everyone else. Most people need permission to act. They need consensus. They need the majority opinion to shift before they feel comfortable making a move. And by the time that consensus forms, by the time the headlines catch up to what the coin show floor already knew, the window has quietly closed. The premium environment at Tulsa was not just a pricing footnote. It was a message about where the market had been, where it currently stood, and, for those willing to read it carefully, a strong indication of where it was preparing to go. The dealers understood it. The serious stackers walking those aisles understood it. And the businessman who studies markets not for entertainment but for intelligence. Markets do not announce themselves. They do not send formal notices. They do not schedule press conferences. They do not wait for the right moment in the news cycle to reveal what is actually happening beneath the surface of prices, premiums, and public sentiment. Markets speak in behavior. And if a person is serious about understanding where money is moving, not where commentators say it is moving, not where algorithms suggest it should be moving, but where it is actually moving, then they must learn to read behavior before the crowd catches up. The Tulsa Coin Show was not a major financial event by conventional standards. It will not appear in quarterly reports. It will not be referenced in central bank communications or cited in academic papers about market cycles. No television anchor will mention what happened on that floor as evidence of a broader economic shift. But it should. Because what happened in Tulsa was a clean, unmanipulated, real-world demonstration of a principle that every serious businessman and aspiring entrepreneur must eventually internalize if they intend to build lasting financial intelligence. Demand does not always look the way we expect it to look. Dave arrived expecting sellers. He found buyers. Josh watched product move that he had not prioritized moving. Dealers who came prepared for a difficult, slow show found themselves in genuine conversations with people who had already made their decisions before they walked through the door. These buyers were not reacting to a news headline. They were not responding to a social media trend or a YouTube algorithm recommendation. They had done their thinking quietly, privately, and in advance. And then they acted. This is the behavioral pattern that separates market participants who build wealth from those who perpetually chase it. The crowd moves after the signal becomes undeniable. The serious buyer moves when the signal is still quiet enough that most people are dismissing it entirely. There is another lesson embedded in what happened at Tulsa, one that speaks directly to the business community and to young entrepreneurs who are still developing their framework for reading opportunity. Not every dealer at that show was operating with the same intelligence. Side by side, at tables separated by nothing more than a few feet of open floor space, the same item was priced at $58 at one table and $48 at another. A $10 difference on an identical product. No difference in quality, no difference in authenticity. Simply a difference in how seriously each dealer was paying attention to current market conditions. One dealer was pricing based on what the market had been. The other was pricing based on what the market was. This distinction between anchoring to the past and operating in the present is not unique to precious metals. It appears in every industry, in every market, in every economic environment without exception. The businesses that survive transitions are the ones that release their attachment to previous conditions quickly enough to serve customers at the reality of today, not the comfort of yesterday. The dealer holding gold buffalo coins at $300 above current mint price was not dishonest. He was simply unwilling, or unable, to let go of a previous reality. And in markets, that unwillingness has a cost. Not always immediately, but always eventually. The Tulsa Coin Show delivered something rare and genuinely valuable. It delivered ground-level truth in an environment where ground-level truth is increasingly difficult to find. It showed that retail demand for silver, real demand, from real people making real financial decisions, was not behaving the way the broader narrative suggested it should be behaving. It showed that conviction was present in the market before confidence had returned to the headlines. And for the businessman, the entrepreneur, the serious student of economic cycles watching all of this unfold, that gap between what the floor already knew and what the headlines had not yet said was not just interesting, it was actionable. The question is never whether the signal was there. The signal is always there. The only question that has ever truly mattered is whether you were paying close enough attention.